Welcome to the Shergroup podcast, where we share ideas on how to help businesses grow and prosper in the online world. Join host, Chief Shergroupie Claire Sandbrook as she discusses her digital journey and how Shergroup is helping thousands to keep their business flowing and growing. Here on the Shergroupie podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of Shergroup on the Sofa. I hope wherever you are in the world today, you're in a good place and looking forward perhaps to a bit of an easier weekend. Maybe my UK audience looking forward to a long break, not so much here in the US. We don't get any extra days for Easter. So wherever you are in the world, I hope you've got a nice weekend waiting for you somewhere. So my guest today is Sue Chapple, who is the CEO of the Chartered Institute of Credit Management, and we'll be getting into our conversation with Sue in a moment. Before we do that, we just wanted to give our number one fan, Ross Saunders, in Norfolk, England today, a big shout out. Hey Rossi, hope you're doing well today. And I think
Hi Ross.
Okay. So, all right, thank you so much. I hope you're listening to it on your iPad today. Okay. So, Sue Chapple, great to meet you today and to record this conversation. And I'm in awe of what you and the CICM continue to do in your work in credit management. As you know, I've been long involved with the Institute and have many fond memories of working with you all. But I know that you're moving the organisation forward and we want to hear about that today. But before we get into that, let's start at the beginning of your journey, because Shergroup on the Sofa is all about talking to people about their journey. When you were at school, what did you want to do and why?
Well, thank you, Claire, and it's lovely to be here, and thank you for your kind words about the CICM. I think that those of us that have been members and are members, it's very close to our hearts and it kind of never leaves you. So I'm very fortunate to be in the position I'm in and I'm delighted to be with you today. Well, it won't surprise anybody who knows me that my very first school report at the age of 5 said, Susan, because that's what they used to call you when you were cross with you. No one ever calls me that now unless I'm in real trouble. Susan would do much better if she spent more time doing her own work and less time supervising the rest of the class. That was my first school report, which my mum liked to trot out at regular intervals. And that kind of never left me. I was always going to be a teacher. I was in no doubt I was going to be a teacher. And in fact, for quite some time at junior school, I was going to be the teacher, not just a teacher. But when it came time to leave school and make those really formal decisions, I didn't want to spend any more time in education. I just wanted to leave home and be able to buy my own clothes. That was so career decisions kind of took a bit of a back seat in favour of lifestyle choices. And I left school at 16 with just O levels. I didn't stay on for A levels. And then I went into banking. My first job was in the TSB bank in Sidmouth. I'd applied for in those days all of the UK banks were in the high street in Sidmouth. They are no longer. I think there's only one left, but they were all in the high street. So this would have been in those days NatWest, Barclays, Midland, TSB. Who've I missed? Lloyds. They were all there. I applied to all of them. And my theory was, this is 16-year-old fresh-faced Sue. If I didn't get a job at any of those, I was going to join the RAF. That was as far as the thought process went. I actually got offered 3 of the jobs, and I took the one at the TSB because I just liked the people the most. I thought they were the nicest people, and so that's kind of how I started out, really.
Right. Well, my old dad set me up a TSB bank account when I was maybe about 5. And so I can even remember what the passbook looked like. So,
well, I was the one that when I joined the bank, it was prior to the computer systems coming in. In fact, the TSB was the first bank to bring in online banking. And my job was to make up the interest. And the cashiers used to turn around from the counter, bang the book on the shelf, interest, please. And I would have to run along the counter and get the book and then look in the massive ledger and write up the interest. I mean, it's like something out of Samuel Pepys when you say it now.
Yeah, it does. But I mean, yeah, I would have thought you were that age. But yes, I remember having my book and having it stamped in. So I can relate. So so you were like you know, 16, wanted to have my own money, just like you did. But then obviously something changed for you. I mean, who would you say had the most impact on your career, and why was that?
Without shadow of a doubt, Mr. Peter Koch, who was the manager of the TSB bank when I joined. He had such an influence on me. I've always had a work ethic. I was brought up in that way that if you wanted anything, you had to work for it. No one else was going to give it to you. And I grew up very much in a generation where parents didn't really say yes. They just generally said no. So you mainly didn't even bother to ask the question because the answer would be no. You might have sometimes got a we'll see, which really was just a delayed no, but did give you a bit of hope in the meantime. So I had a strong work ethic. Mr. Koch was he was a bank manager in the traditional sense. The bank manager, he was extremely fair. He was scrupulous with attention to detail and his desire for his team to be trained and knowledgeable and work as a team. And he was just a really supportive man. He was very strict, mind, but I trusted him implicitly. He helped me no end, and he really encouraged me. You know, as a young, I was pretty outgoing. I think I was pretty outgoing, but you know, no finesse or lots of common sense, but not much else. And he was the one really that gave me the confidence that I could be more than just a cashier. And I actually went on to become the first female bank manager in the TSB. And I did my banking exams in lieu of A-levels and a degree. And we lost him later last year, and I miss him enormously. He left a huge mark on my life.
Yeah, I'll give you again that parallels my own story. I mean, men come in for a bit of bashing in some ways, you know, but for those of a certain age, it was usually a male mentor that we had, and I'm so glad I had somebody similar. And you obviously had a very strong male mentor, and you know, thank you to all the men out there that have mentored us women into becoming perhaps the leaders that we have become. And I think our job now is to mentor men and women to be the leaders that they can become. Have that in your life. It makes a hell of a difference, especially when you come from a pretty ordinary background and somebody takes you. Yeah. That's obviously what happened to you. So fantastic. So you had this amazing male mentor, Mr. Koch, God bless him. And then what was your journey then? You said that you became the first woman bank manager of the TSB. I mean, how long did that take? What was your journey like from this, you know?
Well, so I joined the TSB at 16. You know, I was out straight from school. So I was molded into that culture and that career. I was an exemplar of TSB. Yeah. And TSB was the new kid on the block, really, in terms of modern day banking. Obviously, it had been around for eons, but it was the first to do online banking. It was first to do transient banking. It was very progressive in its time and very supportive of girls and women into senior roles. As an example, I can't remember the years get lost in time, don't they? But I think I became a bank manager in 85, something like that. Lloyd's didn't have a female bank manager until about 4 years later. So that shows you just the difference in the trajectory. I mean, I think women didn't even really do exams in the other banks, and we were doing them in TSB. So I left here. I thought I would never leave TSB. I thought I would be there forever. I absolutely loved it. I was manager of several branches, and I left when I was manager of the branch in Exmouth, which was quite a big branch, 20 odd staff, which is unheard of for a bank now. And I left when Lloyds and TSB merged, and it wasn't really ever a merger. It was Lloyds buying the properties that TSB owned. That's what it was. And I didn't like the new culture. I didn't like the new environment. It was very much about sales. It was selling insurance, and it was at a time when transient banking didn't really fully exist across the whole portfolio. So when you moved branches, your customers moved with you. So even if you only moved to a branch that was 15 miles away, your customers would come with you because it was you that they banked with. Yeah. And that meant that you just ended up having to sell to the same people because they would buy stuff from you. I know it didn't sit with me. So I left the bank and I went to work for South West Water. And I joined South West Water just after privatisation. It's about 2 years after privatisation, I think. And about a year before the Wolf reforms came in. And the Wolf reforms, of course, for anyone that doesn't know, was one of the things that was included in it was that you could no longer disconnect non-paying water customers for not paying their water bill. And that was when I started to get really interested in debt and credit management, because suddenly you've got to do something different to get your money back. You can't take the product away. What else are you going to do? Yeah. And that led to reviewing the whole customer service journey, the whole billing journey, and all of that. And I was at South West Water for 15 years, and I absolutely loved it. Then I got the opportunity to go and work for Severn Trent Water, who were setting up a new company that was within the regulated family, but it wasn't regulated itself. And it was a company set up explicitly to help other water companies and other utilities collect their debt. Yeah. And so I went to work there. That was a fabulous opportunity. The whole intention of that business had always been to grow it, to sell it, which we did very successfully, and that business was sold. And then I went to work for EDF. So I've kind of got the utility bug now. And I spent a number of very happy years at EDF. EDF became the first energy company to get the CICM accreditation for best practice, and I loved it there. And then I got the chance to do something really different, which was to go and work with the Cabinet Office, looking at how the government manage debt. And as one of the biggest creditors in Europe, that was really interesting. And I met some of the brightest, funniest, cleverest people that I've ever met whilst working at the Cabinet Office. But having come from a private sector background, it's a very big switch going to work in government, and the strategic intent is different. And I come from a world where at some point you've got to make a decision and you've got to make some money. That's how everyone gets paid. That's what makes the world goes around. It's very different in government. And so after 2 years, it kind of got to the point where you have to make the decision, which are you going to stay in public sector or are you going to stay in private sector? And I opted for private sector. And that was when I got the opportunity to work at the CICM. And I absolutely could not believe it. I honestly thought that I'd died and gone to heaven. It was a new role, and it was head of strategic relationships. And Philip had created this role because he was very aware that the Institute needed to broaden its horizons and get more companies and partners involved. And I took quite a big pay cut to go and do this job, but I absolutely couldn't believe that I'd got the chance to go and work for my professional body. It was so joyous, and still is. I mean, every day is just joyous. And so I did that role, and I did that role for a couple of years. And then I remember it absolutely vividly on the 20th of March, 2020, which people will remember was 3 days before lockdown. I took over as acting CEO. So Philip went to do an interim position at the Small Business Commissioner, and had asked me to step into the role pending the board getting around to recruiting it properly. Being a chief executive had never been on my radar. I had never considered it. I'm not in the least bit ambitious. I'm diligent, I'm energetic, I'm enthusiastic, I'm conscientious, I'm all of those things. I am not ambitious. And I think sometimes the former can be mistaken for the latter. But I kind of was a bit rabbits in the headlight anyway. And then 3 days later, when the announcement came, and our offices at that time were in a tiny little place called South Luffenham, a beautiful old watermill building, but listed a watermill, which by definition has water running through it. Nobody had laptops. I think a few of the senior team had laptops, and we had no phone system that could operate outside of the business, outside of the building. So my first few weeks of being CEO were quite the baptism of fire. I'm sure they are for everyone, but it was quite the arrival.
We're talking about your journey today. So yes, that is a huge. Well, let's break that down a little bit. I mean, I hadn't realised, and this is why these interviews are so interesting for me, to hear the backstories of the people that I'm interviewing and to hear their magnificent experience. I mean, through the utility and energy sector that you've had. Yes, of course, you'll be an expert in credit management with thousands, if not millions, of accounts under your belt. So I've no doubt that we can understand why you're now in the position you're in. But then to go to Cabinet Office, that is a huge switch. But very interesting for you to see the inner workings of government. I wouldn't draw you on that today. I think it's a bit boring.
And obviously you can't share any confidences, but I think the thing that is not confidential, and it's kind of obvious when you say it, but it's not obvious if you don't know, is that the way the government treat their debts is very different than the way private sector treat their debts. And one of the reasons for that is that all of the departments have different teeth. They can take different actions. So, HMRC can send you to prison. The child maintenance group can take your passport away. There are lots of different things that they can do. So, and HMRC's job is to protect the Queen's, or the King's purse as it is now, the King's purse. That's their job. So it's illegal to not pay HMRC. So it's a very different set of thinking. It was fascinating, and I learned so much. And as I say, some of the brightest, cleverest people I've ever met.
Yes. Well, I'm glad to hear that there were bright and clever people in government. Yes, the debate on debt has been going on for a long time, both at it's government's own debt and in the private sector, and how the private sector recover their debt, which of course I'm heavily involved in that. So I'm glad to hear there was some bright thinking somewhere. Just for the she said. Let's turn away from that subject. So I'm going to be on my soapbox. It's your interview. Let's talk about the Institute of Credit Management, which has definitely, in the 20 plus years I've been involved with the Institute, has done its bit to educate government on what is and is not good, credit management technique and policies and procedures. So tell our viewers about the Chartered Institute and what it does.
Yeah, so we talked about who'd had the most impact on my career and why. We didn't really talk about mentors, so I can't really talk about my current role without talking about Philip King, who was my predecessor and was known across the industry as Mr. CICM for many, many years, and has been so supportive and generous in his knowledge, and so encouraging in convincing me that I could do this job, to the point that I am actually doing it now, as opposed to just, what I mean by that. Yeah. So Philip has been and still continues to be a huge support and mentor to me, and I wouldn't be able to do this if it hadn't been for the support he gave me in the early days. So I suppose, with every curse comes a blessing, as they say, and the lockdown was a massive pivotal change for everybody, but for CICM. So we had almost zero digital content. We had, as I say, no one had laptops. We didn't have the technology to work remotely. So, my priorities when I took over were very different than the priorities that Philip had been following and that I thought I would be doing. So I didn't do any of the stuff that Philip had been doing, which in those days was mainly externally focused. I had to just focus internally because I had a whole team of people who couldn't go into the building, a building that was likely to be underwater any minute because it flooded regularly and there wasn't anyone there to sort it out. And we had very little that we could give to our members that wasn't face to face. So the first 3 months were just an absolute hive of activity, and the team were amazing. The team just absolutely rallied. We managed to somehow get hold of laptops. Our IT provider got everything set up. People just, we were on endless Teams calls like everybody was, but the team really pulled together. And what we came away with after the first quarter from lockdown was a really impressive set of digital content, of on-demand training, bite-sized training. We recruited a digital marketing specialist. That was Becky Sharp, who's our marketing manager. She said, we need one of these, and she found one, and we got one. And that was Zoe, and Zoe's only recently left us and has been replaced by Nevin. We took on Tom Sharman, who was a marketing apprentice, digital marketing apprentice. He's now fully fledged. And what these people brought to our business was the opportunity for us not to survive, but to actually grow during that period, which is what we did. And so we've been able to change our offering almost organically. It brought us ahead of the curve. It would have almost certainly been something that would have been on the strategic planning for 2 or 3 years hence, but there wasn't any time for that. So really, when we look back now, and furlough, of course, was a blessing because we were able to keep some income coming in, and because the weather was so nice, and the office was in such a nice part of the country, but it was hard for people, but it wasn't as traumatic as it could have been. And so it got us into a really good place. So when it got to the end of 2020 and the language from the government changed slightly, it was I think it was work from home if you can. I think it was something like that. It was a bit of a nuance to it. And the whole team said, we can't work from home. And so everyone went back to the office, and has been back at the office ever since. We've people work in the office. We sold the building. We've got new purpose-built offices in Orton Southgate, which is just outside Peterborough. It's only about 15 miles from the other offices, but it takes away the liability of the listed building and the flooding in the middle of nowhere and all of those things. It gives us a much bigger catchment area for recruitment, and we're 45 minutes from King's Cross. So there's lots of advantages. So actually, when I look back at lockdown now, obviously there are any amount of things that want to make you scream and run for the hills, but in that context, it moved us where we needed to be a lot quicker because there wasn't any choice. And as they say, necessity is the mother of invention, and it certainly was for us.
Yes, and it was a beautiful building, the Watermill. I mean,
beautiful, and it still is. It's been turned into apartments, and it's beautiful.
Yes, that's perfect setting for it, with a nice car park. So yeah, very, very good.
Yeah.
Well, and that the whole point about how the institute pivoted. I mean, obviously, this, that many businesses were faced with that same dilemma, and so well done to everybody that did pivot. But obviously, the institute had its kind of persona and its kind of approach, which obviously had to change very quickly. So well done in you and your team in being able to do that.
It had to change very quickly for us, but also the industry needed it. We needed to get. One of the things that we were faced with was, many organisations furloughing the credit team. That was one of the things that happened, and they didn't furlough the sales teams, or they didn't furlough the customer service teams. So then what you've got are teams of people who are now responsible for making sure that the cash comes in, but they don't have any idea. So we quickly built some tools for how to, the emergency guide to credit, and got that out there. So it was, it was a very stressful but very exciting time. And when you look back on it, of course, the stress comes out of it, and you look back with slightly rosy coloured glasses. But it was a moment for sure.
Yeah, doesn't look like it did you any harm, although that's I'm sure it wasn't totally comfortable. So you've got this massive experience in your professional life. You're now heading up one of the leading organisations for credit management in the world.
The biggest in the world and the longest standing. We were formed 85 years ago. Yeah, so we have a lot of history.
Yeah, fantastic to hear that. And so we want to celebrate that. So with that backdrop, I mean, what do you think are the hot topics in the collections sector in your part of the world?
Well, the main things that are the things that they've been kind of kicking around on the periphery for quite some time. So recruitment, retention, training, succession planning, that's always a big one. As organisations move and flex and change, that's making sure that they've got the right people, that the pipeline of the right people is still there. And one of the things that's really important to us is raising the profile of credit management as a career. That's one of the things we take really seriously. And when we talk about credit management, we mean the whole cycle. So from pre-contract right the way through to fully paid, litigation, enforcement, everything. It's the whole cycle. So that's a very hot topic, and that's always been relevant. But since COVID and people leaving the workplace, leaving employment, there's not such a strong pipeline at the front end as there used to be. So making sure that school leavers understand that this is a route, making sure apprenticeships exist in that market, making sure that graduates understand what you can do with your business degree, and all of those things is really important to us. So recruitment, retention. AI, always a hot topic. I think the industry is quite well focused on robotics and machine learning. I think there's not so much real AI, and I think there's a lot of work to be done in terms of data and processes in order for AI to be properly embraced and effective across the industry. But it'll come. It's there's lots of good conversations going on about it. The other thing that's hot in hot topics in the sector are the rate of insolvencies and whether that's something to worry about, whether it's a good thing. Jury seems to be out on whether this is just a lot of zombie companies tidying up from that shouldn't have survived but survived longer because of the government support. And is there going to still be a tsunami of debt coming through because of the increase in the cost of living, which I refrain from calling a crisis, because I think, particularly in the UK, I don't know if it's the same in the US, that the media have an over-reliance on the word crisis, and that there are a lot of things going on in the world that are a crisis. I think the cost of living situation is very difficult and very challenging for a lot of people, but it's not a crisis. It might have been at the beginning, but now it is what it is. So is there going to be a tsunami of debt increase as a result of that? It's not being seen yet. There is so much forbearance out there, so much breathing space. There's still a massive amount of cash swirling around the economy from the government support in the COVID days. But what we've seen over the last couple of years is there's a greater level of inequality. So those that are struggling more, and the sort of the middle people and upwards are managing okay. So there's a lot to do there, and it's how does the industry deal with and react to that, and you're managing vulnerability and all of those things, and of course, as a result of interest rates and costs and all of those things, there's been quite a lot of businesses merging, acquiring, closing, growing. So there's a lot of shift in the industry.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a few things going on, but they're generally the same things. Just the context is different.
Yes, I see that as a continuation of previous conversations and developments, and it's just been. I think everything's just become more acute because of what COVID did to all of us, and how we're some of us have got out of it easier than others, and some are left behind, and things,
Yeah.
And it's had a huge impact on the mental health of the nation. I read the Telegraph a lot, and that's what it's coming out at. It's just left people in a very strange situation.
Well, a strange situation and some unrealistic expectations.
Yes.
I think for particularly some of the younger generation, the phrase that often gets used, being paid to sit in the garden in the sunshine, that's not reality. That isn't reality. And I think it's, we have, and I'm not criticizing the government that provided that support at the time, because I think it was great. I think it was as quick as it needed to be. I think it's very easy to look back in hindsight and say, well, there weren't enough controls and it should have been this and it should have been that. There wasn't time to do those things. It was quick, and to get that over the line and done. And many, many, many good businesses, ourselves included, actually, would have had a much harder time if it hadn't been for that government support. So I think that was okay. But now we do need a bit of a reality check, I think, with ourselves now.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think that's entirely right. And of course, the impact of COVID, which, whether you want to blame it or not, but it happened, and it happened to the whole planet. That's the interesting thing about it. It wasn't just our country, it was the whole world. But what are the major challenges facing industry? We can get past COVID. What do you think are the other challenges that are facing industry now?
I think that the challenges are, again, they don't really change. The challenges are making sure that customers are supported, making sure that if you're dealing with collections, that you do the right thing to the right customer at the right time to get the right result. None of it's rocket science, but the how you do it and the tools you've got to do it with change and flex depending on what's going on. I think the things that we talked about, hot topics, they are equally challenges. So for companies wanting to get technology into the business, getting automation into the business, many or most companies that are dealing with credit management, it's not that's not their core thing. The thing that they do or make or sell or provide, or the service they offer, is what they do and where the bulk of the investment goes. And the credit management teams are often working off Excel spreadsheets or some different system, or trying to make the CRM that the company use. So to actually provide the credit management teams with the tools and expertise to take them into the 21st century and beyond isn't as easy as it sounds, because it's not where the investment is. So there's a lot of awareness and understanding needs. And I think, when I talk to CEOs and finance directors of big companies, because credit management teams generally are so diligent and so effective, they make it look as though it's working off the back of an Excel spreadsheet or, whatever, when it isn't really. So it makes it very difficult with a finance director to put a funding case together. So those things I think are challenging, and will become more challenging as the rest of the industry, the rest of the sectors become more adept at AI. Because if we as credit professionals don't also become adept at AI, we will get massively left behind. And so I think that is a challenge, how you bridge that gap of understanding of data management, all of those things.
With your, I mean, you've obviously had wide range experience across B2C and probably B2B. I mean, you really, I mean, a lot of people, you know, I'm getting involved, and you're getting involved in this World Credit Congress, which we're doing in Orlando in October, and I'm so pleased that you're going to be there.
Very exciting.
We need people like you. But I get asked a lot, you know, is it B2B focused or B2C focused? You know, what kind of audit? And my answer is it's going to be credit people with a background in either or. It doesn't matter. Do that, or what do you say about that?
Yeah, both, everything. And it's really interesting that there does seem to be a historic view, and I have no idea where it's come from, that CICM is more B2B focused, but no, we're definitely not. We spend a massive amount of time building the professional standards, building the vulnerability framework, which has any amount of large companies had input into it. So no, it's both, and in the magazine and the website, you'll see that everything is equally split between both. I mean, good credit management is good credit management. The processes and procedures which you need to follow based on the contractual agreement relationship you have with your customer or end user might change, but good credit management is good credit management. It follows a set of principles, and that's what we support. But we could, you know, we do have some really specific residential consumer focused stuff, and we have specific commercial B2B focused stuff, but no, we're neither one nor the other.
I'm so pleased to hear you say that, because that's obviously in my role, I have to deal with either or, and I really don't see a difference. So I'm glad that you kind of seconded that. So turning back to the CICM, let's give it a plug. What are your members gaining from being members of CICM? You know, what
do you know, it's interesting, because when I knew I was going to be talking to you about this, I spoke to quite a number of members. Just, you know, give me a couple of words. What is it you get from being a member? And I think for myself, I've been a member for years, long before I ever worked for the professional body. And for me, it was about that belonging to a gang, to the, you know, I often used to say, you know, this is your gang. This is that there's, I think when you work in an organization that does something and you're helping them collect the cash, but you're not doing the things. So utilities are a great example of that. You know, they're providing energy or providing water and sewage services. And when I joined CICM, I couldn't believe that there were all these other people doing what I do in different companies. I mean, it sounds bizarre, but I didn't even know that was a thing. And suddenly it's a thing, and you're part of something. And then you realize that actually this is a proper route, and you can properly qualify and all of those things. So I think recognition and belonging. Then some of the other words that came up was support, network, insight, advice, learning, training, guidance, friendship. Just, I mean, it's the belonging to something that can help you do your job, support your career, further your career, change your job, change your career, and also give back. There's an opportunity for people who know stuff, learn stuff, have achieved stuff, who want to share it, and many of our members become tutors and sit on our various boards and committees. So it's there's room for everyone.
Well, I must give another couple of shout outs. I must give out a shout out to Philip, because like you, he definitely supported me in being involved in the Institute. But I must also give a shout out to Brenda Linger, who actually encouraged me to join the advisory council, I think it then was, for board of the CICM many moons ago, the ICM, before it became chartered. So shout out to Philip and Brenda. Huge impact.
Yes, here. We can't go down that route because there's so many people, and we won't be able to say them all.
No, I know. and you can't because yours. You can't have any favourites. But there are many people that have given a lot actually.
And continue to.
Yes, they were all at the British Credit Awards the other week. I saw so many faces of old, still enthusiastic, still enjoying their credit careers, which is fantastic. It's that sort of job, isn't it? So listen, Sue, thank you so much for talking to us today. We look forward to seeing you at the World Credit Congress in Orlando in October and flying the flag for the CICM.
Big pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you've enjoyed it, Ross.
Yes. For everybody else, please visit the website at CICM.com and you can connect with Sue on her LinkedIn page. And find her there. And I'll put all this in the show notes. You've got LinkedIn School Institute of Credit Management, ICM. So just put that into LinkedIn and it'll be in the show notes anyway, so there'll be a link there. For everybody else who's staying with Shergroup on the Sofa, thank you so much for watching our channel. We appreciate you and we appreciate your patronage of this little idea that we had to interview great people with terrific journeys, which everyone can relate to. I think one of the things about today, Sue, is that everyone can relate to that 16-year-old who just decided, I want to go out and get my own money and buy my own clothes and I'm going to get into banking and then, built out a fantastic career. That's such a good inspirational story. Please visit our website at shergroup.com. You can follow us on every channel we've got going out there. And obviously we're on YouTube as well. So everyone, have a good Easter. Thank you so much, Sue, and great to be in touch with you. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. See you soon, Claire. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Shergroupie podcast. To join our Shergroupie community, subscribe by going to our website at www.shergroup.com. Keep up with the latest Shergroup news across all our main channels, including YouTube, LinkedIn, and across all social media. Stay connected and begin building more business relationships.